So I was scrolling through the Steam Workshop and looking at ways to replace the god-awful iron sights on the MP5 and Insurgency. Great game, by the way. When I started thinking about iron sights in other video games, ultimately, every iron sight is just a front post and a rear aperture, but what really makes one gun sights great and another gun sights terrible? Here in this video, I want to kind of break down a very subjective topic that's kind of personal to me, and review a bunch of different iron sights and a bunch of different video games. I'll be giving each gun sight sort of a semi-informal review, offering constructive criticism, and at the end of the video, I'll talk about what my ideal iron sights would look like. First up is the M4 from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. These are some pretty simple iron sights, but they work quite well. The front post is slightly tapered and ends in a flat, as opposed to a point, and the hood around the front sight post is nicely centered in the rear aperture. The whole sight picture has a nice way of drawing the eye to the correct point of aim and makes aiming relatively easy. Despite it being a nice, simple design that works well, I do have a few nitpicks. The first problem is the rear sight aperture. It has these large wings to either side of the circle that block the player's field of view. In real life, these wings would protect the rear sight from losing its windage adjustment, but in the interest of fictional hand-waving for the sake of competitive gameplay, we're going to nix them. The next problem is sight contrast. Black sights work perfectly fine until the player moves into a poorly lit area or starts shooting at darkly colored enemies. Once that happens, the player's eye might lose focus on the front post. To correct this, I'd add glowing dots to the rear sight or put a dab of color on the very tip of the front post. Finally, I think I'd trim off a bit from the top of the rear sight to open it up. The dots already help the eye focus on the center of the screen while providing contrast, so we really don't need that extra bit of metal hanging in the way and blocking the player's field of view. Up next, we have my personal favorite. These MP7 iron sights in Insurgency are part of a mod made by Caleb, and his mod is based on another mod that replaces the default MP5K with the MP7. I can't say enough good things about these iron sights. They are unobtrusive and clear. There's a perfect amount of gap on either side of the front post and the inner edges of the rear sight. The colored stripe on the front post isn't a natural color found in the game, so there's no way for your eye to lose sight of it when aiming at fast-moving targets. Moreover, the MP7 model itself is small and thin, so it doesn't impede any more of the player's vision than it has to. There isn't a metal ring surrounding either the front or the rear sights, and there are no unnecessary parts. This is just a perfect iron sight, guys, and I highly recommend that you download this workshop mod if you play Insurgency. Let's take a look at Planetside II now. This is the default carbine for the new conglomerate faction, and its iron sights are very similar to the M4 ones we looked at earlier. The differences are that it already has colored dots to either side of the rear aperture and on the tip of the front post. The wings to either side of the rear sight are shorter and don't get in the way as much as the M4 in Call of Duty. And the front post sight hood is a rectangle, rather than a circle. The thing I like most about this sight is that there's a large gap between the outer circle and the inner rectangle. This provides a large field of view around the front sight, so fast-moving targets won't be obscured by the sight itself. There are also these little triangles centered on the front sight hood that point to the tip of the front post. These give you yet another reference point to help you, in case your eye wanders off your point of aim. As far as corrections go, I think the only real improvements I can make are to trim the side wings a little. This is just a really solid sight. Earlier in the video, I mentioned how terrible the MP5K iron sights are in Insurgency. Well, they're not really that terrible, they just have so many small things that bug me. Let's go over those things. First off, let's look at the front post. It doesn't end in a flat or a point. It's a slightly flared and rounded bulb at the tip, and I find it to be very distracting. When looking at the target past the front post, it helps when the tip is a clearly defined end, but this front post does not do that at all. It works okay at the range the MP5K is intended for, but there are occasionally times when I want to push the range of the gun, and these sights hinder me. Next, let's look at the excess metal around the rear sight. It manages to be even bulkier than the M4 sights, and it blocks a lot of the field of view. Sometimes, when camping a corner, it's helpful to place your point of aim a few degrees off the edge of whatever you're camping to account for delays in reaction time or server delay when engaging running targets. But with the rear aperture being so bulky, this gun forces you to place your point of aim right at the edge of the front ring. These sights are just so restrictive. As far as fixing the sight is concerned, I would just recommend the MP7 mod from earlier in the video. But if you don't want to do that, there's another mod that puts green dots to either side of the rear sight and puts a green line along the front sight post. It also cuts down on a lot of the excess material on the rear sight. Overall, a great improvement. So, I've been offering commentary on a lot of iron sights in video games, and going over what improvements I'd make to them. I'd like to bring your attention to what I think are the perfect iron sights. Funnily enough, these iron sights are a science fiction interpretation of the same gun we just reviewed, the MP5K. Ghost in the Shell first assault's iron sights are actually closer to dot sights in their appearance. They still have parts of the iron sight along the bottom of the sight picture, but the point of aim is a free-floating dot that isn't obscured by anything. The material that is present along the bottom of the sight picture actually serves to draw the eye to the brightly colored dot. This is a fantastic sight, and it also manages to aesthetically work in the setting of the game. 10 out of 10. That concludes my roundup of a few different iron sights in video games. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any suggestions in the comments and stay tuned for more videos.